Hey, welcome back to Common Ground. Thank you for being here. So, in the last episode, per se, we covered Genesis 1 through 3. We covered the story of creation through a relational lens, through the lens of God as love that continues to protect, continues to seek, continues to be asking for relation and asking questions that give us the opportunity to reflect on our inner world and see how that's affecting our outer world. So, moving to Genesis 4 through 6, we're starting out with Cain and Abel, who are the children of Adam and Eve. So you'll remember at the end of the last one, Adam and Eve were sent out of the Garden of Eden. Now they're going to have to go out in the world. They're going to have to learn the human condition journey of learning wisdom through relation with others. And so they went out and they had children. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and to know here is a relational knowing. If we look at the definitions of some of these words, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. Cain sounds like the Hebrew word forgotten, forgotten, not forgotten. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Abel was a keeper of sheep. Cain was a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And here you'll see when I post my pictures of my Bible, I've actually highlighted in orange all the time that we see the word Lord, but in small capital letters, because this is actually a designation that this would be the name of the Lord that's actually not spoken aloud in the translation that we would have. It would be the capital IHWH, which out loud would be spoken Adonai. So I started highlighting so that we can see as we move forward just how often this is used. And we have now shifted from the Elohim God, which is the creator of the universe, to Adonai, small capital Lord, which is we are in relation with this being, not just this is the person who created us, but this is a relationship. He's here walking with us and speaking to us. So Cain brought an offering of fruit of the ground. Abel brought an offering of the firstborn of his flock. And what this says here is that the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Now, I looked at the definitions, the translations here, and it's acknowledgement. There wasn't an acknowledgement of Cain and his offering, and we're not told why. That's one thing that I'm learning throughout Genesis is that we're not told why some of these things are happening, which is really interesting for me as a person who has learned or is learning to stop controlling so many things. I do still ask the questions, though. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? Again, the questioning, not demanding, not be happy, not obey me, but a question. And he's asking Cain, can you name your inner state? Why has your face fallen? Why are you angry? What's happening inside of you? The Lord goes on to say, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, and you must rule over it. So he asked a question here. If you do well, which the translation is, if you do what is good, will you not be accepted? And the translation for accepted literally means for your face to be lifted. And so I feel like here God is offering awareness and choice. Like if you do what you know to be good here, will your face not be lifted? Will you not become happier? Will you not be in a better mood and see better things happening in your life? And if you do not do well, if you do not do what is good, sin is crouching at the door. So sin here is a predatory force, like from the words of God himself. Not sin is waiting to come out of you, but sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, and you must rule over it. And so I took this to mean that your anger doesn't have to define you. You get to choose what to do here. So again, we see God is giving choice, giving awareness. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. We don't know what they talked about. We don't know what their conversation sounded like, but we know that they spoke, and we know that that was not enough. There was a relational rupture, and Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? This is really, really interesting for me because God says to Cain, where's your brother? Not like, why did you do that? How could you do that? You're an awful person. But he's again offering a relational lens. Where is this person who you've spent your childhood with? Where is this person that you were just talking to? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the word for keeper here, and again, I don't know how to pronounce these words. I don't hear them audibly. I look them up, but it's Sohmer, and that means protector or one who preserves life. So this is a very relational quote here. Am I my brother's protector? Am I the one who's supposed to preserve my brother's life? And it's kind of like he's saying, like, why is that my responsibility? That shouldn't be on me. I don't know where he is. And the Lord said, what have you done? Again, with these relational questions, these questions letting you look at what just happened here. The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. This to me is grieving. This to me is saying that violence is something that has a cosmic impact. Your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. It's affecting the earth. The earth is crying out to God because blood has been spilled here. This violence is reverberating beyond the moment of creation itself, of the fact that the earth exists. And creation is disturbed by this. So this is this is sad. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood. So again, we see the relational rupture between man and man, but then also man and earth. So creation itself has had a rupture from this experience. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Now, the word for punishment here actually means guilt or burden. And so this is him showing remorse, I think, and showing vulnerability. My guilt or my burden is too heavy for me. And listen, like, because of this, you're telling me, like, I'm driven away from the ground. I want to hide from you, from your face. I want to be hidden. And he's also, I think, showing fear here. He's saying, like, now whoever finds me will kill me. He's realizing, oh my gosh, I've acted out of violence. This wasn't a thing that they knew of before. You've got to think how the way the story is being told, they haven't seen killing like this before. And so he's saying, like, what have I done now? Someone could be mad at me for doing this, and now they could do this to me. Oh my gosh, this is such a vulnerable moment. And then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. To me, this is protection again. I'm going to protect you from vengeance. No, I'm going to stop the violence. Like, there's going to be a mark on you so everyone knows not to harm you. I feel like if God were vengeful and controlling, then in this point, a lot more painful things would have happened than putting a mark on him so that people couldn't attack him. And a note that I put here is that Cain tried to redefine the relational humanity that God had created in Eden or in creation itself. And Cain tried to say here, like, I'm only responsible for myself. Connection is too much responsibility for me. I don't want that. I don't want to be my brother's protector. So in trying to redefine humanity, it cost a rupture, and now the ground is not going to cooperate with him anymore. Another note that I put here is that Genesis frames logic as dangerous, not as neutral. Of course, we aren't actually responsible for others, but this story teaches that violence doesn't start with hatred. It starts with disconnection, and it becomes rationalized. And so if relationship is optional, then that means that power decides the outcomes. If we're not really here to be in relationship and to look out for one another and protect one another, then that means that power and conquering can decide the outcomes of these situations. And so the logic that Cain is offering here, the moral isolation, like, I'm not actually responsible for that person. Why are you asking me? I don't know. That's a moral isolation. And we're seeing that that's not beneficial. That's not actually seemingly how God wanted it to be. So Cain left and says he knew his wife. Again, we have this relational knowing, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And when he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So then it tells us all the people that were born to Enoch. It tells all the people that were born after that. Again, if God were vengeful and controlling, I feel like Cain's line would have been disrupted or replaced. It doesn't necessarily say that they were blessed, but we do see that they are still reproducing and growing. So then we see more of this line where those who dwelled in tents, they had livestock. Some of them, one of them was the father of all who play the lyre and the pipe. So we're seeing here, I think, that this unhealed violence that Cain is carrying through his lineage, it can coexist with creativity and with progress and with culture, because we still see positive things happening. We see people living together and having organization and music. Then we see Lamech, who said to his wives in chapter 4, verse 23, "Hear my voice, you wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold." So what I took this to mean here is that he's boasting. Cain killed his brother from what seemed to be shame and fear. He thought that the Lord liked Abel more than him, and maybe he was jealous in that moment. Maybe they tried to talk it out. We're not really sure what that conversation sounded like, but regardless, it ended in violence. But it seems to me that Lamech is saying that he killed from pride. A man did wound him and did strike him, but he's saying that if the revenge on Cain is sevenfold, then any revenge on me, or my revenge that I bring to others, is 70 times that. So it's seeming that violence in this family line has not become just an impulse thing that we do out of emotion anymore. Now it's seeming to become an identity. I'm a person who is vengeful. So to me, this is like a systemic growth of violence. It has become a choice at this point, and unprocessed pain being passed down through lineage seems to become ideology, which is dangerous. And Adam knew his wife again, this relational knowing. She bore a son and called his name Seth, for she said, "God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him." To Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh, and at that time people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Then we move to chapter 5, Adam's descendants to Noah. So I'm not going to read this one word for word. This is very long. It was a little bit boring. But we can see here that once Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. Adam, after he fathered Seth, he lived 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. So he lived 930 years, and he died. Then Seth fathered Enosh. He lived a total of 912 years, and he died. And this continues to go on and on. So we see a life that was 905 years, a life that was 910 years, a life that was 895 years. And in every single one of these, we see he lived, he fathered, and he died. So what I'm learning about storytelling as I'm reading Genesis is that the repetition of things is emphasis. It's told that way for a reason. It's not meant to just be some boring lineage record keeping. There's a theme here, and why are they using the same words over and over again? What is the meaning? And so to me, it was that generations are passing, so that means that life keeps going. So there are births, and there is family, and there is connection. God did not abandon humanity because of the things that have happened. Life is still going on. But there's also that thread of mortality, because we have birth and then life and then children and then death. And so even the longest and most fulfilled life is going to end. I put that chapter 5 is also potentially teaching patience and humility. And you'll notice, especially going into this next portion, the years that people are living are becoming less and less. So Adam and Eve were sent out of the garden. They could not eat of the garden of, or the tree of life, so they will not have immortal life. They're now mortal. And the years of humans are becoming less and less, 930, 912, 905. I put here that we have a contrast between Cain's line and Seth's line. So now we're following Seth's line, and in the previous chapter we followed Cain's line, and we saw that they built cities, they used tools, they had power, there was violence, and there was boasting. And then in Seth's line chapter, there is a focus on time and endurance and continuity and naming and mortality and very like human presence things. So I thought that was interesting. So moving on, the next life was 962 years. That was Jared. Then there was Enoch, and he walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. That was a very interesting sentence to me because it does not say that he lived X amount of years and he fathered someone and then he died. It says that he walked with God. Walking with God is still possible at this point, judging from the words used here. And he was not, for God took him. So I'm not really sure what God took him means, but it does not say, and he died. So there was something different about Enoch. And I will put in the notes for this video that there's some PDFs that you could look at for the book of Enoch. Very interesting. And also a couple of YouTube videos. Then we have Methuselah, who lived 969 years. So that kind of jumped back up a little bit. And then we have Lamech, which was 777 years. And then we have Noah. And then it moves on into Noah's line. So I put that the generations closer to God back in time, they were longer symbolically, but also that could mean more vitality and more wholeness. And so human life, as we move down the ages, is gradually distancing from its source and from its vitality. But what I'm seeing here with Enoch, him being different, he walked with God and God took him. I think that's a message that intimacy with God does still matter and that death doesn't get to have the final word with him. I put, this story stays with humanity across centuries. It honors life with memory. It allows time for the story to unfold. And to me, that's commitment to a long accompaniment, a God who is not in a hurry to destroy or to get to the final chapter. So, like I said, we had the birth of Noah, and after Noah was 500 years old, he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Then we have chapter 6, increasing corruption on earth. So this will be the last chapter for this video. A note here, I put that there was violence everywhere, and then there was a response. So we'll see what happens in this chapter. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. This is very interesting because who are the sons of God and who are the daughters of man? This, to me, is where the book of Enoch comes into play. The book of Enoch is not typically included in a lot of the Bibles that I grew up knowing. I did do a little bit of research, and the book of Enoch is included in other versions of the Bible that are studied and revered in other schools of thought, other philosophies. So, like I said, I'm going to include the PDFs and the videos here. There's a couple of different theories, which we'll hear about in just a little bit. But I want to say that when they took as their wives any that they chose, took is meant to be non-consensual. So this could be coercion. But at this point, violence has gone from being an individual thing that happened in the moment to being a cultural thing to being a systemic problem. So now taken against their will. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. So to me, this sounds like grief, and it sounds like limiting the coercion, the violence, the pain. So his days shall now be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." So that is a fascinating passage to me because that's literally all that it says about the Nephilim here. They are mentioned again later in the Bible, but again, check out the book of Enoch because there's a reason why I think this is a little bit more vague, and the book of Enoch actually goes into a lot more detail that can help kind of make sense of that. The Lord saw, God sees, not God reacts here, so we see a lot of God looking, that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So this is interesting to me because we start hearing that he regrets making man and that man is wicked and evil. And to me, that starts to feel a little bit like I'm just a sinner. I'm corrupt, and that's all I'll ever be, that I felt growing up. And so I'm just highlighting here that God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth. He saw their inner world. He saw a warped inner compass, every intention of the thoughts of his heart. Now, heart, this word that we see a lot of times in the book of Genesis, heart does not mean just your heart and your emotions and your romantic thoughts. This was the seat of your will and your decision making. So this to me is a warped inner compass. Like I said, like there's a lot of things going on that have been painful for man, and they're not making good decisions. But it says that the Lord saw, not that he judged them for it. The wickedness of man, the word for wickedness here is just the letters RA in the spoken translation that I can say here. That means harmful, destructive, and broken, not evil. This is damage being done, but not necessarily rule breaking. I still don't see any actual words that say this is breaking God's rules, and so he's going to punish us. The word regretted, the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth. This is nacham, Nacham, and that actually means to grieve, to ache, and to be moved with sorrow. So this is deep emotional pain. This is not, I wish I never would have made them, they're awful. And notice it says here, it grieved him to his heart. So the grief here is preceding the action. God is not just immediately acting on a dime. He's feeling his feelings here. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So everything was blotted out. Everything. Man, animals, creeping things, birds of the heavens. That means that violence poisons everything that it touches, not just a little bit here and there. And blot out here means erasing a corrupt system or stopping destruction, not just destroying for the hell of it. So Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, and this is the word chen, Chen, which means grace, gift, and unearned regard. So that doesn't just mean that he was his favorite, but this was in the eyes of the Lord. So again, we're orienting. This is an orientation statement, and it means that God sees possibility in Noah, and it's kind of setting a new stage for what's to come. But what we're learning here is that God is actually deeply affected by human violence. It's not just something that's making him angry. He's grieving. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So righteous here means inner integrity, not total sinlessness. It also says that he walked with God, which is a very specific word that means shared presence. So this is relational. So amidst the violence of the world, Noah was a man who had inner integrity. Blameless means whole, intact, or uncorrupted. So he was walking in relational presence with God. So this was still possible at this time, despite all the violence going on. Generations. These are the generations of Noah. That word generations actually means outcomes and unfolding results. So we're seeing here that Noah is a response that is born out of the violence of the world when you stay walking with the Lord, when you stay with inner integrity and with that wholeness and uncorrupted. So I don't think Noah is an exception to the rule. I think he's literally showing us this is what can come of staying true to your inner integrity and letting this be a relationship. So I thought that wording was interesting. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. Hamas, Hamas. This is injustice, cruelty, exploitation, and systemic harm. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on earth. Again, corrupt means to ruin. Humans, shachat, Shachat, the earth. And God is responding to stop that. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And here is ketz. That's a limit, a boundary, or a termination point. That does not mean that I'm just killing for the fun of it. That literally means I'm making a boundary here with all flesh, because the earth has been filled with violence. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. He gives him the full plan for the ark. And this word ark is repeated over and over and over. Tevah is the word that this translates to, Tevah. That means a box, a container, or a vessel. But this is the same word that's used later for Moses in the basket, which we'll read about. So I took this to mean a container, literally to preserve life, to help life keep going. So he gives him how long it needs to be, how many decks it should be. And he says, "For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life." Remember, breath was breathed into the dust to create Adam. He's destroying all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. So he's not just protecting bodies by putting them into this ark. He's protecting shared breath. Adam and his family who are going to be in this ark, they are carrying on the breath of life. "Everything that is on earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. I will establish my covenant." The translation here is to raise up or to confirm or to make stand. So this is stabilization and propping life back up. It's not starting completely over from nothing, but this covenant is literal translation here, a binding relationship or a commitment. And that happened before the flood. That happened before Noah did what he was told. That happened before he listened and built the ark. God is already saying, "This is what I'm committing to. Before I even know what you're going to do, I'm saying this is what I will do. I'm binding myself to the future of life. I believe in you that much." So he really saw what was possible here. "And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds according to their kinds, and the animals according to their kinds. Of every creeping thing on the ground according to its kind." So see here that we're keeping that variety intact. Everything according to its kind, just like in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Everything had a purpose. "And everything creeping on the ground, nothing is too small or insignificant to be preserved, because they're going in to preserve the breath of life and to keep them intact. 2 of every sort shall come into you." All forms of life, animal, food, continuity, this is all going to be contained into the ark. And I want to say here, 2 of every sort shall come into you. These animals came to Noah. They came to him. That's what it says here. It doesn't say go seek them out, go find them. They will come into you. So I'm just wondering what kind of energy would have been on the earth at that time and how the animals would have known to get there. What were they following? What were they feeling to keep them alive? And this literal translation means creation and breath. "Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them." So pointing out here again, this is interesting to me. Noah is not being told to eat the animals. He's being told to bring food in for him and for the animals. And this chapter ends by saying, Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. So pointing out here that 2 of every sort is going onto this ark. But 2 of every sort implies that these animals, they're going to mate, they're going to preserve life. But this is minimum viable life. Like we're not bringing 4 of each just in case. So this is a literal lifeboat, like a women and children first and then men come at the end. Like we're preserving it, but we're doing exactly what must be done. And I think too, the animals coming to Noah, this is showing that preservation of the kind of life that God wants is cooperative. It's not violent and it's not coercive. So that's very cool. So that is the end of Genesis chapter 4 through 6. When we pick back up with 7, we're going to see what else happens with Noah and the ark and a really cool difference between the clean animals and the not clean animals and the difference in the numbers that we're told to come for those. So hopefully someone out there is enjoying this. I know I really am, but I'll just say here, I would love if anything came up for you that you would like to discuss or dig into further, please know that you can comment. There's also a chat included here within the Substack that you can go and, include commentary on, because that would be awesome for me. So we'll pick back up probably in a week, and thank you for being here.